What's going on? A lot going on. Our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, says we are more Europeans than Europe. On the other hand, our former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, used to say, we don't have any core value. What does mean that? Is it a journey from no values to some values? Joining me today, Michael Bear and Darshan Maharaja. Both are vibrant voices in terms of freedom of speech. Michael is also PPC candidate for Mississauga Erin Mill riding. So Michael, I touched Mark Carney's wording. So what do you make out of those words?
Well, I'd love to know what he means exactly. If he's talking about the European values of free speech and freedom of religion and free association, I'd welcome that, of course. You know, if he's talking about traditions like the Magna Carta and the rule of law, of course, those are all European things that I'd love to see come back to Canada, actually.
Yeah, but the thing is, this is a journey from no values to some value.
No, of course, it's a total myth that Canadians had no values. It's nonsense, right? It's Trudeau's dream of social engineering. It was never a reality.
Yeah, but people call Mark Carney Trudeau second. Do you second this thought?
He may be worse. He seems to be smarter, which is, you know, if you're a deceptive person, intelligence is not always your friend, right? I don't know. Time will tell. We will see what happens with Mark Carney, but it looks terrible, right? The optics are awful. It's just he's a globalist. He's the World Economic Forum. He's just he's not something that we need for Canada. We need to radically decentralize political power in Canada. And that's just doing the opposite, right? We don't need somebody like Mark Carney in Canada, not at all.
So what do you make, Darshan Maharaja ji, when he says we are more Europeans than Europe?
He's just saying things for public consumption, and this is not uncommon at all in politics. For example, former Prime Minister Trudeau, having proudly declared that Canada has no core identity, there is no mainstream. Then when situations arose, he said, this is not what we are as Canadians. This is not what Canada stands for. If you don't have a core identity, then these statements are, they cannot exist in the same universe, right? So they say things that they think will gain them popularity. So I view the new Prime Minister Mark Carney's statement in that light. See, what happened was Justin Trudeau came in as a savior of the Liberal Party because they had been washed out in 2011, and by 2015, even when the campaign began, they were trailing in the polls. But then he not only revived the party, but brought them to a majority mandate. So, the Trudeau brand over the decade or so eroded. And he had become, frankly, a liability, as you can see in the polls. Like, part of it is questionable, but there is a core part of it which is just because Justin Trudeau is no longer at the head of the Liberal Party, and now there is somebody else with impressive credentials. So my theory is that, the backroom guys sat down, analyzed all the factors, and drilled down on what it was about Justin Trudeau that had made him a liability. And this was one of them, possibly. That saying that Canada has no core identity, there is no mainstream, these are things that, have become a negative for the party. So let's go the opposite way. But instead of saying that we are a North American country, because Mark Carney was in Europe, he said that we are the only European country outside of Europe. That was also playing to the gallery, frankly, because he was talking to Europeans. He talked about us being European. These statements don't mean anything. I don't take them seriously at all in, my assessments. They are said, and they enter your brain from one side of the, one ear, and you let them exit from the other ear. That's where he is. He's just, making some kind of statement to fill the space that needs to be filled with something. Nothing more than that.
So Michael, Darshan said he was trying to fill some space. Was he really able to fill some space?
I don't know. I think people are very cynical. I agree very much with what he said. I think almost all politicians are just going to tell you what you want to hear or what they think you want to hear, right? That's how you get elected in Canada. The PPC is trying to do things differently. These are our core values, personal freedom, individual responsibility, fairness, and respect. These are the type of things, if people come to know this is what our background and our principles are, that it'll bring more people on board. But no, you can't. None of the establishment party politicians can be trusted at this point. No, none of them.
So you said it's hard to, rather impossible to trust all those legacy political parties. And you are a candidate from PPC. I'm a member of PPC as well. And we endorse and buy Maxime Bernier's some ideas, rather most ideas. But what are the prospects of that kind of a politics, which is based on common sense? But unfortunately, common sense is not very common in our society. So what are the prospects of
You're right.
those ideas?
It seems that the common sense is extraordinarily uncommon. I think it's just a matter of what happens with our economy. If Canadians feel the pain badly enough, if they lose their homes, if their businesses are starting to fail, maybe they'll stand up and do something. But it seems that they're just unwilling to open their eyes and see what's happening.
Right. But how long would it take Canadians to realize?
Well, let's hope it's not before it's too late. Like it's
Isn't
it's
already
been
too
years.
late?
I've been waiting and waiting for people to wake up for years and years, but it's a slow process, right? I mean, the PPC is one of the fastest growing political parties. As we got 800,000 votes in the last election. I mean, it's not nothing, but if people knew about it, we'd have millions of votes, not hundreds of thousands. So that's our job, is to get out there and to educate people and try to reach out, have a dialogue with them, and, tell them this is what, if you're interested in learning about the ideas of the PPC, it's right here. It's in our purple book. It's got all of our policies. I'm happy to provide a copy. If you give me your email, I can send it to you. It's worth taking a look, because it'll open your eyes to a lot of things that have been done in Canada that are not really being done properly.
Whatever PPC says is almost the stuff what Republican Party, especially mega team, says over there. But in the United States, there is an appetite for such political ideas. But unfortunately, in Canada, people are mostly caught up in two major parties. One is Conservative Party, and Conservative Party leader, he was saying, axe the carbon tax. Election slogan, sort of, we were hearing from him. And now we hear from him through his advertisements, Canada will never become 51st state of the United States of America. So based on this slogan, do you think a party can run a campaign, a party can win the hearts of the voters?
It's hard to say. I mean, we have a totally controlled media. Our mass media, it drowns out any of the independent voices. So, the vast majority of Canadians have no idea who Maxime Bernier or the People's Party of Canada is. That's sad, and we have to change that, but it's the reality. So I really don't know. I mean, I'm optimistic in the long run, but very pessimistic in the short run. I think things could go very badly with people like Mark Carney, and I'd be surprised if the Liberals get elected again. But Canadians just seem to have this sort of insanity where they just keep going back and forth between Conservatives and Liberals, and we have the same problems, and it just keeps repeating itself. It's like the definition of insanity. You're making the same choice to try and solve the problems by the people that made the problems in the first place, right? So are we really going to elect people, the establishment parties that got us into this mess? And do we trust them to solve it? It seems insane. I don't understand it, but here we are.
Right. Darshanji, Michael just said that he's optimistic in the long run, but he's passive, stiff in the short run. How do you see the things?
I share that assessment actually.
Do we really in a position to have optimism in the long run? Also, I'd like to attach this question.
Yeah, I was getting to that. If possible, my definition of short term is longer than his. See, the problem is this, in my assessment, that generally in the Western world, you can say it is no longer possible to create new political institutions. For example, you compare the Aam Aadmi Party of India,
right,
which came out of nowhere and has gained ground. Whether you agree with them, disagree with them, love them, hate them, whatever, it was possible to create a political institution from scratch.
And that's what happened in Germany, for instance.
In Germany. That is
AFD,
a notable example in the Western world.
Yes.
Where AFD,
yeah,
and even in France, Marine Le Pen's party, the name escapes me at the moment. But barring those exceptions, it is, even in the US, MAGA had to use the machinery of the Republican Party. Right? You cannot start a new political institution and make it viable generally in the Western world. This is my assessment. Now, Mike has been looking at the political side of it. I have looked at the economic side of it. And in fact, this blew up yesterday because day before someone had shared a chart of how the various economies have done, typically the G7 and European. And Canada was dead last in terms of inflation adjusted per capita GDP. Over the last 10 years, our economy has grown by 0.5% total, whereas the US has grown 20.7%. So this reminded me of an article that I wrote in January 2023, where I had come to a conclusion of 0.67%. Now, this one was, I believe, from IMF or World Bank or one of those big institutions. And at the time when I posted my article on Twitter, there was uproar, furious disagreement, saying your data is wrong. I said, I have provided link to the official data. Only the Excel sheet is mine, where I have, just put it in place. Then 6 months after that, OECD came out saying our growth rate was 0.80%. Now, yesterday it said 0. So we are basically flirting with 0%. That is today's reality. If you try to look to the future, then all the structural issues like housing affordability, cost of living, job creation, these are the foundations of the economy where you can project how this is going. And my conclusion was that we are done for at least one generation. So if I'm being optimistic, it is for a period after that. That, all that crushing weight of lack of future prospects will finally bring about some public pressure and, change the public mood. Because right now we are stuck in an ideological rut where we find reasons for not doing things like, pipelines for oil and gas or whatever. climate change, carbon tax, whatever the policies, we find excuses for not doing things that will make Canadians more prosperous. That will change probably after one generation has gone through all that grind and then come to a conclusion that ideology cannot trump economic interest. So that's my time frame for being optimistic.
It's a very scary situation. So, Michael, when do you expect Mark Carney calling for next election?
I'm not sure. I have no idea when he's going to call. Whenever he thinks it's favorable for him and his party.
Yeah.
Right? That's, I think they'll try and delay it probably as long as they can to try and manage the situation a little bit better and to present him to the Canadian public and try and sell him. But I don't know if it's worthwhile speculating on these type of things. It comes, just try to be prepared for it when it comes and move forward. Right? That's all I can do.
So as a candidate for PPC party, obviously you're looking forward to fight all those political parties. So PPC is doing well in terms of talking about their ideological, points. But what are, frankly, tell us, what are the hopes for PPC?
My hopes for PPC? Wow. I mean, it would be nice if there was, some sort of a breakthrough in the media that we could actually get proper and fair coverage. I think that if Maxime Bernier was allowed to participate in the leadership debates, it's possible that we could win 20 or 30 seats. If it's unlikely, but it would be something that would be within the realm of possibility. But as long as they're shutting out the leaders from the leadership debates and not giving them any kind of coverage, it's very difficult.
But I think I remember once Maxime was allowed to participate in leadership race.
Yeah, it was the very first one, right? Yes, that's true.
Yeah, because I was the candidate on those days, and I remember. So in this situation of despair, I would say, what are our hopes, especially when we have confrontation from the United States and our politicians are politicizing 51st state notion in our home politics, in our local politics. They are trying to do a point scoring out of President Trump's sort of a 51st state insistence. So would that sort of a point scoring help politicians here in Canada?
It may, but I do find it ironic that, that they talk about a post-national state and then they try to whip up the nationalism and the patriotism in these. What patriotism? You just told them that they don't want to have a country, that they stand for nothing. So it's ironic that they're using this situation, which is just Trump being Trump, right? He's loud, he's obnoxious, he's blustering, he makes out these crazy proposals, and then he comes back from it. It's his negotiating style. Everybody knows that, right? Except they're trying to make it out that it's real and that Trump's going to attack Canada and bring troops in. I mean, it's so ridiculous. They're just abusing people because they're stupid enough to believe their stories.
Right. Darshanji, how do you see this scenario?
See, especially in democratic politics, but also elsewhere, the politician wants to convince you as a voter that he is your savior and that only he can save you. Now, Trump has given them a gift on a golden platter because now there is something very big to save you from. And unfortunately, in this emotionally charged atmosphere, rational talk is not going to be productive. So there is this competitive patriotism where everyone tries to be more patriotic than the other guy. Like yesterday, I saw someone post from Victoria that some Tesla cars had been torched. Now, until, last month or maybe last year, owning a Tesla car was the ultimate virtue signal.
How quickly things change.
Yeah. Because, and I wrote this in my latest article, that the people who are into the current thing, cognitive dissonance does not bother them. So they don't care if this current thing is diametrically opposed to the previous current thing. Right? So in this kind of, first of all, rationally compromised and emotionally charged environment, it's a race for competitive patriotism, and whoever proves that they can be a better patriot and save you from evil Trump, he will win, or that party will win. But in that all, hula balu, the problems that made us vulnerable to such talk from Trump have been forgotten. So I don't know what the next government's action is going to be, but if I take a clue from Mark Carney's visit to Europe, his first order of priority should have been to defuse the crisis with President Trump. Whereas he chose to go to Europe. And we know the personality of President Trump. He can be vindictive. I'm being perfectly frank here. And he would have taken a slight at the fact that the new Canadian Prime Minister did not come to see him first. So Prime Minister Carney has made his own task more difficult. I think it would have made sense for Prime Minister Carney to score some wins on the tariff war issue, 51st state, whatever you want to call it, which would have strengthened his position in the election. But instead of that, he sought to score those wins in Europe. And he didn't. So he has dented his own position. This is my assessment.
So, Michael, how much threat you see from President Trump's 51st state narrative? And PPC, what PPC thinks about that quote-unquote threat, for instance, both?
Well, it's not, I don't believe that he really wants to make Canada a 51st state by force. He's throwing an offer on the table to make fun of our own politicians who got us into this situation. It's absurd that we have this tariff dispute in the first place. All we had to do was agree to better border security and stopping the flow of fentanyl and dangerous drugs that's flowing into Canada from Canada. We had a huge bust in British Columbia with a fentanyl lab with incredible amounts of drugs. He's right. The Americans are right. Canada has become a national security threat for the United States. We've harbored people with dangerous ideologies. We've allowed them to operate. We've allowed them to fundraise. When the Palestinian occupation was happening at the U of T grounds, when I went down there to film it, I overheard a police officer saying that there are IRGC agents in the encampment. They know about it. These are Iranian terrorists, government-sponsored spies and murderers. They're operating in Canada with the knowledge, and the Canadian government's doing nothing. So what do we expect? Of course, we've become a national security threat to the United States with our own stupidity and incompetence.
So what does PPC think about that quote-unquote potential threat from the United States?
Well, I can't really speak for the PPC. You'd be better off to ask Maxime Bernier what he thinks, but I don't believe that the Americans would ever try to invade Canada by force. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But there's a lot of tremendously attractive things that they're coming up with. They're talking about eliminating the income tax. They've got a lot of things that are really going to stimulate the U.S. economy that we're not doing here. It's actually worse than you were saying, because when you factor in inflation, it's probably a negative real rate of growth, right? It's astounding. They have destroyed our country over the last 10 years. And we are going to definitely suffer. How badly and for how long, I don't know. I hope we can have an economic recovery if we put the right people in place and the right economic policies. We can rebound. Look at what happened in, where is it, Argentina, right, with the new libertarian prime minister. I think we could have the same sort of thing. They're turning around their economy very quickly. So we'll see.
Yeah, Darshanji, one more aspect of this whole discussion. Some commentators suggest that it's not just about border issue. I mean, fentanyl inflow to the United States, illegal aliens. It's not just about that. Even Kevin O'Leary endorses this point of view, what I'm suggesting here. That is about personality and ideological clashes between Trump and our former Prime Minister Trudeau. They can't get along with each other because of personalities, because of ideological differences. Do you see that factor as well?
See, first of all, more than the actual smuggling of fentanyl, it is the movement of funds related to that activity. For example, we know that recently a Canadian bank was penalized in the US. They had to pay, I believe, $3 billion US, right? Everyone is focusing on the product, but not the revenue from the product. Now we know that Canada has unfortunately become a major hub for money laundering. So I think that is what is also adding to President Trump's rhetoric, although he hasn't spelled it out. Secondly, I see a lot of people saying that, there's only 1% of the fentanyl going from Canada to US compared to 99% from Mexico. But you cannot judge the volume of trade by the volume of interceptions.
We may be intercepting 2%.
Right? Maybe we are not intercepting, and given our border, it's something to think about. So, whatever, as he said, whatever President Trump says, that is his opening gambit, and it's always very extreme. And then when you push back hard and negotiate, you think you have scored some wins, but you only end up where he wanted you to be in his mind. So, but instead of taking a rational approach to this, we have gone all emotional because there is election season, etc., etc. Secondly, one thing that he mentioned I wanted to focus on, which is the absence of, balanced voices on the mainstream media. It's because this has become a power structure in itself, and they know that they can make or break someone. So they will promote the ideology that they ascribe to or subscribe to. As a result, a new voice will never get promoted on those platforms. And that is to the detriment of the public, because, it's like Galileo saying that, hey, you know what, the universe does not rotate around Earth. And we are still in the same stage where Galileo was almost burned at the stake. And that's where we are, almost 500 years later. So that is our main weakness that somehow, if we can, we have to overcome.
So, Michael, do you also buy Kevin O'Leary and other commentators this commentary that there are personality clashes as well as ideological clashes?
Oh, definitely. It's
to what extent?
Well, Trudeau shows, like, just by his expressions and his statements, that how disgusted he is that someone like Trump could be elected again, right? And what he's showing is an arrogance and a disregard for the will of the people, right? It's anti-democratic in the extreme. And Trump is as big and blustering as he has a thin skin. So he lets people, even insignificant people like Trudeau, bother him. I have no idea why he would do that. I mean, I think it's not rational. You're right about that, which is dangerous, which is unfortunate. considering he is one of the most powerful politicians in the world. But yeah, we are in for interesting times. I think that things will settle down. Hopefully, we'll have some progress in terms of getting the media to present balanced voices. That is a huge problem. I would agree with that. I don't think we can ever progress as a party unless we get fair treatment by the media.
Yeah, both things like what we observed in the United States. Trump was discouraged by legacy media. The only media helped him get elected was Fox News. Yeah. But here we don't have any alternate to Fox News.
He relied a lot on social media, which is something that we may have to do as well, because the mainstream media will ignore us. So we're just going to have to focus our efforts there.
So can we rely on social media strategically, tactfully, in order to raise our rational voices?
I think we must.
Can we, but?
I think we can.
Right.
See, look back to the first term of Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, when he was the first politician in Canada to leverage social media for his campaign. So this is not a new concept. And we have enough people in social media in Canada, plus there are people in the US who are very prominent and their content is consumed in large numbers in Canada. So I think that is the way of the future. As we know, MSM has become too stymied, maybe even fossilized, to, really inform Canadians. I'll give you one very simple example where, for some reason I was talking to a friend about healthcare system. This was way back in December 2021, I think. And we were talking about healthcare, and then I decided to look into it, wrote an article. But before I wrote an article, the main finding that I got from OECD website, I tossed it out on Twitter, and then there were a lot of arguments for and against, and I kept replying to all of them. So my article became very comprehensive on what ails Canadian healthcare system. And I mean, a few thousand people read it, but so many of them came to me saying, we never knew about this. Because MSM will not talk about this, right? All the nitty-gritty, the data from official sources, which already exists, but they don't bring it to the public, right? So, first of all, the long-form podcast is very useful, although we are supposed to be in the attention economy. When you have something valuable to say, something that resonates with the audience, they will listen to you for 3 hours. It's not an attention economy, right? So if you leverage as a political party or as, even a common person, if you leverage that power of social media, definitely it is the way of the future. MSM is going to be around, but it will resonate with fewer and fewer people as time passes.
Right. So, Michael, you both gentlemen are very optimistic. Given the leadership of two big parties in Canada, I'm not optimistic. Unfortunately, in our conversation, I have to confess this point. So how could Canadians, ordinary folks like myself, be convinced about our better future through our politics, please?
You have to go back to sort of fundamental principles. We have to understand what are the legitimate functions of the federal government, and in my mind, we have to keep it very simple. We need national defense, we need a national police service, and we need a national court system. When I talk about radically decentralizing political power in Canada, I mean it. I think that's all the federal government should do. Everything else could be done by the provinces, municipalities, or even better, left up to the individuals themselves, right? We have this strange notion. We need to promote individual sovereignty, not this false national sovereignty that we're trying to whip up right now. It's ridiculous. we need people to be able to resist the political coercion, right? That's guiding us into these terrible mistakes. So if we want a competent and uncorrupted government, we have to restrict it. We have to limit it to its legitimate functions. And right now we don't. We have unlimited government. The government just can't think of enough things that it has to be responsible for. It's an insane situation that we're in, and it has to change. It will change. It's just a matter of time. Hopefully, and pain, right? And hopefully, not a lot of blood will be spilled, but it may come to that point, right? I mean, in the U.S., they have a saying, the tree of liberty must be nourished from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And we have a lot of tyrants in Canada at the moment. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
How would you like to take Michael's comments at the next level?
I'll pick up on the word that he used, tyrants. Yesterday, I came across two pieces of information. One is that in Vancouver, there is a movement afoot in which the city is participating officially to reduce the consumption of meat and dairy to zero. Talk about being a tyrant, right?
That's insane.
And the Vancouver Parks Board, which is an elected body, has decreed that in the community centers, patrons of fitness centers can only watch sports channels on the TVs that are on the walls. Talk about being a tyrant, right? The problem is that we have become overly ideological. The individual sovereignty that you talk about is an alien concept. And that has to change fundamentally for our politics to change. Now, usually in a situation such as this, a huge crisis can change people's minds. Unfortunately, we are wasting our crisis. It's common to waste opportunities, and I don't blame people for that. It's human.
There's no leadership.
We are wasting crisis.
Yeah.
Now, that is very disappointing to me. So, I would have hoped that with this crisis of the friction with President Trump's administration and his proposed plans, to the extent that you take them seriously, it would lead us to a deep rethink of what we need to be doing as a society, but that has not happened.
It's a manufactured crisis. It could have
That's
been
what I was about to ask. Is it a crisis, really?
No. If we got our border security and crack down on these drug traffickers and money launderers, the Americans would work with us. They'd drop the tariffs right away.
But what about the personality clashes?
I think he's waiting until we get rid of Trudeau. But honestly, as soon as Trudeau's gone and if Poilievre gets in or if somebody else gets elected, I think these tariffs will go away.
But Mark Carney is a Trudeau second, and Pierre is also, in my opinion, a Trudeau third. So
it's a sad situation. He might be right. He may be right. He's just going to keep punishing us until we don't stop electing corrupt establishment politicians. Maybe I don't know.
No, in fairness, I think Mr. Poilievre has been talking about some of the issues, like the drugs issue and the crime and the lawlessness and borders. He has been talking about it for some time, so I'll give him marks for that. I think from the options available, he is the best place to convince President Trump that these things will be attended to.
But President Trump said that this guy is not a MAGA guy. And then he reacted back to President Trump.
Pierre Poilievre believes whatever he puts his finger in the air, whichever the way the wind is blowing, whichever the polling group is telling him, that's what he believes.
No, I disagree. He's been talking about these issues for a couple of years. So, as I said, I give him some marks for that.
Yeah, but the thing is, Darshanji, unfortunately, I don't see any statesmanship from him either.
It's not possible in our political structure.
No, I wouldn't say. I may disagree with our former Prime Minister Harper on certain issues, the way he appointed some senators or, few things. But otherwise, he had guts to do a few good things.
But look at how Canadian society has changed since he left office. I mean, think about Professor Salim Mansoor losing an election.
Right. I mean,
Right.
election is something else, losing nomination.
Yeah, he was disqualified, but then he ran on PPC ticket and
Yeah.
he lost. A man as eminently qualified as him should have won regardless of which party or even as an independent.
Right.
If he was contesting, he should have won.
Right.
That is the political structure that I am talking about.
So how would you like to conclude our today's conversation?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be having a town hall in the next couple of weeks. Again, it'll be in the Erin Mills riding, so I'm going to invite everybody in the Erin Mills riding. I want to hear what people have to say, right? I mean, it's important to listen to what the issues of the constituents are. And I also need to get signatures for my nomination paper, so I could appreciate some help with that. Really, I'm optimistic. If there is a political solution, I think it's coming from people like the People's Party of Canada. We are not going to see a real solution from the establishment parties. It just goes around and around in a circle. We keep making the same mistakes. And it just seems insane that people, just keep doing the same thing over and over and expect some kind of a different result. It's not going to happen. So hopefully they'll wake up. They'll give the PPC a try, and we can establish something, and we can make some positive changes towards a better future for Canada.
How would you like to try political system one more time in coming election?
No, I'm not built for politics because of too many weaknesses that I have. Like, I'll speak my mind. I'll not take orders from anybody. I'll not go fundraise. So that is out. But, the whole issue is that this entire political structure is, as I said, it can change only with a crisis, and we are wasting one. So my hope is, and these are difficult times, but more importantly and more worryingly, these are uncertain times. Difficult times when you know what the difficulty is. It's relatively easier than when you don't know what the difficulty is. So we don't know when the election is going to be. We don't know whether Jagmeet Singh will once again prop up the Liberals or not. Things like that. We don't know truly what Mark Carney stands for because he's been around for a very short time, and in the meantime he has made noises that a politician is expected to make. So we have not had the time to assess him really. So, that kind of uncertainty is what bothers me at the moment.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, you just heard us, and this is election season. We don't know when Mark Carney calls next election, but stay tuned with us. We'll be bringing very vibrant podcast in coming days. Weather is good. Political environment is not great, but we'll in touch with you through our views. Thank you for watching us today.